Ladies, let me speak to you today about something that's crucial in the relationships we build, the love we share, and the self-worth we carry. We're in a time where expectations are high, relationships are complicated, and society wants to tell us what we should or shouldn't do. But there are some truths that we must hold tightly, truths that shape not just our relationships with men, but our very identities. At the core of every healthy relationship, whether it's romantic, familial, or platonic, lies honor and respect. These two qualities are not optional, they are foundational. Without them, any relationship will falter, because without honor, there can be no true understanding or connection. Without respect, there can be no space for vulnerability, growth, or love. When we talk about honor in relationships, we're referring to recognizing the inherent value of another person. Honor is about seeing the worth in someone, acknowledging their individuality, and treating them as someone worthy of dignity, kindness, and admiration. It's about appreciating not just their presence, but their character, their dreams, their struggles, and their achievements. It means lifting them up even when the world around them might be pulling them down. When honor is present, we don't diminish or degrade the other person. Instead, we uplift them, encouraging them to be the best version of themselves. Respect, on the other hand, is the active expression of this honor. It's the daily demonstration of understanding someone else's boundaries, needs, and feelings. Respect means listening with intention, hearing what is said, and responding with care. It means valuing someone's perspective, even when it differs from our own, and treating their thoughts and emotions as valid. Respect ensures that there is no manipulation, control, or condescension in the relationship, because it acknowledges that each person in the relationship has the right to their own thoughts, feelings, and autonomy. Honor and respect also work together to create a safe environment. In a relationship built on these principles, there's a mutual sense of safety and security. Both parties feel free to express themselves without fear of judgment or ridicule. They can be vulnerable, share their fears and insecurities, and open up about their hopes for the future without concern that these things will be belittled or used against them. This environment of trust is only possible when both people show genuine respect for one another's emotions and experiences. Moreover, honor and respect help to maintain balance in a relationship. They prevent one person from dominating or undermining the other. In relationships where these principles are present, there's equality or recognition that both individuals are important, that their needs matter, and that both parties contribute to the dynamic. Without this balance, one person may end up feeling insignificant, unheard, or dismissed, leading to frustration, resentment, and ultimately the breakdown of the relationship. Honor and respect also go beyond the surface level. They aren't just about politeness or basic decency, they are deeper, more profound commitments. They mean understanding that your partner's emotional needs, goals, and well-being are as important as your own. It's about showing empathy, kindness, and consideration in all interactions, whether in moments of joy or moments of struggle. It's about having the maturity to put the other person's needs ahead of your own when necessary, and the wisdom to know when to ask for that same consideration in return. In relationships where honor and respect flourish, there is space for growth both individually and together. These values allow each person to evolve without fear of rejection or judgment. They create room for open communication, where issues can be addressed and resolved with maturity rather than anger or bitterness. Ultimately, when honor and respect are upheld, they build a foundation that is unshakable. These values ensure that the relationship isn't just about getting what you want, but about creating something greater than the sum of its parts. It's about creating a space where both people feel valued, where both people feel seen, and where both people can thrive. Without honor and respect, the relationship is bound to fall short of its true potential. But with them, it becomes a partnership that nurtures, strengthens, and elevates both individuals involved. Mind games in relationships are toxic, manipulative, and ultimately destructive. They create confusion, mistrust, and insecurity. Instead of fostering openness and communication, they breed doubt and uncertainty. When people engage in mind games, they are more focused on creating emotional manipulation than building a genuine connection. Mind games often take the form of mixed signals, subtle hints, and indirect communication. Someone may say one thing, but their actions or body language suggest something completely different. They might give affection and then pull it back, leaving the other person to wonder what's real and what's not. This creates an environment of emotional instability, where one partner constantly feels like they're walking on eggshells, unsure of where they stand or what's expected of them. The main issue with mind games is that they never allow for clear, honest communication. Instead of addressing an issue directly, someone playing mind games might choose to be passive-aggressive, avoid confrontation, or withhold information. This leads to unnecessary misunderstandings and missed opportunities for growth. When people can't speak plainly and directly with each other, small issues are allowed to fester into bigger problems, and the emotional distance between them widens. One of the most harmful aspects of mind games is that they manipulate emotions. They prey on insecurities, using them to gain power or control in the relationship. A person might intentionally make their partner feel inadequate, doubting their worth or abilities, just to create a sense of dependency. Over time, this manipulative behavior erodes the sense of trust and safety that every relationship needs in order to thrive. Rather than supporting one another and building each other up, mind games keep partners locked in a constant battle of psychological tactics, pushing them further apart. Another damaging effect of mind games is that they undermine vulnerability. In any relationship, it's essential to feel safe enough to be vulnerable. Without vulnerability, there can be no real intimacy or connection. But when mind games are at play, vulnerability becomes dangerous. One partner might withhold affection or play hot and cold, leaving the other partner feeling emotionally exposed and unsure of what to expect. This uncertainty makes it almost impossible for either partner to open up authentically. And as a result, the relationship remains surface level, lacking the depth and trust necessary for true closeness. Playing mind games also disrespects the other person's intelligence and emotional state. It implies that the other person cannot handle the truth or that they are not deserving of transparency. This lack of respect can breed resentment over time, as one person feels as though their partner is deliberately withholding or distorting the truth. Instead of fostering empathy and mutual understanding, mind games contribute to a toxic atmosphere of manipulation and power plays. Mind games also rob both people of their peace of mind. The constant emotional roller coaster, the guessing, the wondering, the trying to figure out the real intentions, leaves both people exhausted and mentally drained. Rather than focusing on nurturing the relationship, they become preoccupied with tactics, second-guessing, and overanalyzing every word and action. This leaves little room for joy, affection, or genuine connection. It's also important to recognize that mind games are a form of avoidance. Rather than confronting difficult issues directly, someone who plays mind games avoids the real conversations that need to happen. This avoidance can keep unresolved conflicts bubbling under the surface, creating an unhealthy pattern of evasion that prevents progress in the relationship. Avoiding the truth doesn't make it go away. It only prolongs the discomfort and deepens the divide. The ultimate tragedy of mind games is that they prevent the relationship from growing in a healthy way. When you engage in mind games, you're not fostering a connection built on mutual understanding, shared values, and honest communication. Instead, you are trapping both partners in a cycle of manipulation, control, and emotional turmoil. Mind games hold both people hostage to their own insecurities and fears, preventing them from experiencing the fullness of love, trust, and companionship. In any relationship, honesty, clarity, and directness should be the foundation. Avoiding mind games and opting for open, respectful communication ensures that both partners feel heard, valued, and understood. When both individuals are able to be straightforward and honest, the relationship becomes a space of mutual growth and trust where emotional safety can flourish. In relationships, it's easy to become so immersed in the other person that you lose sight of who you are. Love, affection, and companionship are beautiful, but they should never come at the cost of your identity. The danger lies in losing the very essence of who you are in an attempt to please, adapt, or conform to someone else's expectations. In doing so, you risk not only losing yourself, but also diminishing the unique qualities and strengths that make you you. When we say don't lose yourself, we're referring to more than just maintaining your individual interests or hobbies. It's about staying true to your values, beliefs, dreams, and boundaries, no matter how deep the connection or how intense the relationship becomes. Relationships are meant to be partnerships where both individuals bring their authentic selves, not places where one person sacrifices their identity to fit into the other's world. A relationship where one person completely adapts to the other's lifestyle, preferences, or dreams creates an imbalance. You may begin to compromise on things that were once important to you, such as your career goals, personal ambitions, or the friendships that help shape who you are. Over time, the small sacrifices may seem insignificant, but cumulatively, they can chip away at your self-esteem and sense of purpose. You begin to forget what it felt like to make decisions for yourself, because you're constantly trying to meet someone else's needs and desires. One of the most harmful ways people lose themselves is by abandoning their own boundaries. In an effort to avoid conflict or to prove their love, they may neglect their own needs, giving more than they can afford emotionally. This pattern often leads to burnout, resentment, and feelings of unfulfillment. In these situations, one person might feel like they're constantly giving while the other is receiving, creating an unhealthy dynamic where the person who's lost themselves feels unseen or unappreciated. When you lose yourself in a relationship, you also lose your voice. You might begin to withhold your opinions, desires, and needs because you're afraid of upsetting the other person or because you feel like your perspective doesn't matter as much. The act of suppressing your true thoughts can erode your sense of self-worth. Instead of feeling empowered to express who you are, you feel as though you're constantly adjusting and adapting to fit someone else's mold. This may lead to feelings of frustration, disconnection, and loneliness, even within the confines of the relationship. Losing yourself also means neglecting the things that make you feel whole outside of the relationship. Your passions, your career, your friendships, they all form important aspects of your identity. When you start to neglect these parts of your life for the sake of someone else, you begin to feel empty and disconnected from your own aspirations. You might find yourself wondering where your sense of fulfillment went or why you feel like something's missing, even when everything seems fine on the surface. The risk of losing yourself in a relationship also means that you may fall into unhealthy patterns of codependency. In these relationships, one person relies so heavily on the other for emotional support, validation, and happiness that they forget how to stand independently. It creates an unhealthy cycle where both partners' identities become intertwined to the point that they can't function without each other. This codependency can make it incredibly difficult to break free, leaving one person feeling trapped in a relationship that doesn't allow for personal growth or individual expression. When you lose yourself, it can also distort your perception of what love truly is. Love should not mean self-sacrifice to the point where you lose your own needs, desires, and dreams. True love is about balance, where both partners can show up as their whole selves with their individual goals, personalities, and passions. The relationship is a place to grow together, not to become absorbed into one another at the expense of your own identity. Furthermore, losing yourself means that you may stop trusting your own instincts. Relationships require self-awareness and confidence in your own judgment, but when you're constantly compromising or second-guessing yourself, it becomes harder to trust your inner voice. You might start letting things slide that once bothered you, or worse, you may overlook red flags and warning signs to avoid rocking the boat. The longer you neglect your own intuition, the more distant you become from the person you were before the relationship began. It's vital to remember that self-love and self-respect are integral to a healthy, thriving relationship. You cannot give the best of yourself to someone else if you have nothing left to give. When you lose your sense of self, you not only deplete your own well-being, but you also deprive your partner of the chance to love the real, unfiltered version of you. The best relationships are those where both individuals are free to be themselves, where both people respect each other's individuality and support each other's growth. The beauty of love lies in the freedom to be fully seen and loved as who you are, not as who you think the other person wants you to be. Settling for less than you deserve is a dangerous mindset that can prevent you from experiencing the fullness of what life and relationships have to offer. In a world that often pushes us to lower our expectations, it's easy to fall into the trap of accepting less than what is truly right for us. But this approach only leads to dissatisfaction, self-doubt, and feelings of unfulfillment. When we settle for less than we deserve, we are essentially telling ourselves that we don't believe we are worthy of the best, whether it's love, respect, opportunities, or happiness. This mindset can manifest in many forms, from tolerating toxic relationships to staying in situations that drain our energy or prevent us from growing. It's an acceptance of mediocrity, even when we know deep down that we are capable of so much more. It's important to recognize that settling isn't a form of compromise. It's a sign of undervaluing ourselves. One of the most common areas where women tend to settle for less is in relationships. We might find ourselves in a partnership where the love is conditional, where respect is minimal, or where our needs are ignored. Sometimes we justify staying in these relationships because of fear of being alone, fear of not finding someone better, or fear of change. But these fears only trap us in situations where we continue to give more than we receive, ultimately leading to resentment and emotional exhaustion. Settling for less in a relationship might look like tolerating poor treatment, disrespect, or dishonesty. It might mean ignoring red flags or making excuses for behavior that doesn't align with your values or standards. When you allow these things to slide, you're not honoring your worth or recognizing your value. You deserve a partner who supports you, encourages your growth, and treats you with kindness, honesty, and respect. Anything less than that is not worth your time, energy, or love. In relationships, settling for less can also mean compromising on your own boundaries and desires. You may find yourself saying yes when you really want to say no, or neglecting your own needs to keep the peace. Over time, this constant self-sacrifice erodes your sense of self-worth. You begin to believe that your needs don't matter, that your happiness is secondary to someone else's comfort. But this is a false narrative. Your feelings, dreams, and desires are just as important as anyone else's. You don't need to sacrifice your happiness to make someone else feel good. Settling for less doesn't just affect relationships with others, it also impacts the relationship you have with yourself. It sends a message to your inner self that you aren't worthy of the best, that you aren't deserving of the success, happiness, and respect you've always dreamed of. When you allow yourself to accept less than you deserve, it becomes harder to break out of the cycle of self-doubt and insecurity. You begin to believe that this is all you're worth, and that belief can limit your potential and hold you back from pursuing bigger dreams. The truth is, you deserve to be seen, valued, and cherished not just in romantic relationships, but in all areas of your life. Settling for less often means accepting situations where you are not given the space or the respect to thrive. Whether it's in your career, friendships, or family dynamics, you should never have to lower your standards in order to be accepted or loved. If someone or something doesn't value you, it's important to recognize that it's not a reflection of your worth, but rather a sign that it's time to move on and seek what truly aligns with who you are. In your career, settling for less might mean staying in a job where you are underappreciated, overworked, or not compensated fairly for your efforts. It might involve tolerating toxic work environments, lack of advancement opportunities, or feeling unfulfilled despite your talents. You deserve a career that challenges you, supports your ambitions, and compensates you fairly for your hard work. Never accept a role or situation that doesn't recognize your value or give you the room to grow. In friendships, settling for less could look like staying in relationships where you're constantly the one giving, without receiving the same support and understanding in return. It's allowing yourself to be around people who drain your energy, who don't respect your boundaries, or who don't celebrate your successes. Friendships should be a source of mutual joy, trust, and encouragement. If you find yourself constantly making excuses for toxic behavior or feeling emotionally depleted after spending time with certain people, it's time to reevaluate those relationships and stop settling for less. When you stop settling for less than you deserve, you begin to shift your mindset. You begin to understand that your worth is not determined by how others treat you or by what you settle for. You are deserving of love, respect, opportunity, and success simply because you exist. This realization allows you to step into a life that aligns with your true potential, a life where you attract people and opportunities that honor and value you. The more you honor your own worth, the more others will follow suit and treat you with the respect and consideration you deserve. It's also important to remember that settling for less isn't just about what you accept from others, it's about what you accept from yourself. Sometimes we settle for less by not believing in our own abilities, by doubting our potential, or by holding ourselves back out of fear. We may let fear of failure or fear of the unknown keep us from pursuing our dreams and goals. But if you don't believe in your own worth and ability, no one else will. To truly stop settling, you need to trust yourself, know your value, and go after the life you deserve. You owe it to yourself to break free from self-imposed limitations and to chase the future you've always dreamed of. There's incredible power in your voice. Too often we hold back thinking that our opinions, needs, or feelings don't matter. We suppress our thoughts out of fear of judgment, rejection, or conflict. But silence can be a form of submission, and the longer we stay silent, the more we diminish our own presence, our worth, and our ability to influence the world around us. When you're afraid to speak up, you're not only letting others define your reality, but you're also denying yourself the chance to create the life and relationships you deserve. It might feel uncomfortable at first, especially when speaking up means confronting difficult truths or stepping outside of your comfort zone. But the courage to speak up, to express your thoughts, to advocate for yourself, to set boundaries is what leads to growth, understanding, and empowerment. One of the most common reasons people fear speaking up is the fear of confrontation. We worry that we'll cause drama, upset someone, or even damage a relationship. But what we fail to realize is that not speaking up often causes even more damage in the long run. Suppressing our feelings or allowing ourselves to be mistreated in silence breeds resentment, frustration, and confusion. When we don't voice our needs or stand up for ourselves, others may not even realize that something is wrong or that we need something different. They can't meet our expectations if we don't communicate them clearly. In relationships, whether romantic, familiar, or professional, it's crucial to express yourself honestly and openly. If something is bothering you, speak up. If you need something, ask for it. Your voice is your right, and it's the key to healthy communication. The people who care about you should respect and value your words. And a relationship built on open, honest communication is one that can withstand challenges, misunderstandings, and disagreements. Bottling up your emotions in an attempt to avoid conflict only leads to bigger problems later on. In the workplace, speaking up is just as important. Too often, women especially are conditioned to be polite, quiet, or deferential in professional settings. We may hold back ideas in meetings or avoid asserting ourselves out of fear of being perceived as pushy or overly confident. But this reluctance to speak up means that we aren't fully contributing to the success of the team or the organization. It means that our ideas, our insights, and our expertise go unrecognized, and it can ultimately hold us back from advancing in our careers. By speaking up, you not only ensure that your voice is heard, but you also demonstrate your value and make your presence known. Setting boundaries is another area where speaking up is essential. Many people struggle with saying no or expressing when they're overwhelmed because they don't want to disappoint others or appear unaccommodating. But the truth is, not speaking up about your limits is a recipe for burnout and resentment. When you don't advocate for yourself, you may find yourself constantly giving, overcommitting, or allowing others to take advantage of your time and energy. Speaking up about your boundaries is not selfish, it's a necessary act of self-care. It's an acknowledgement that your time, your emotional energy, and your well-being matter just as much as anyone else's. Fear of judgment is another barrier that keeps many of us from speaking up. We fear that others will think we're too loud, too opinionated, or too difficult. But what you need to realize is that your voice, your perspective, and your truth are valid. No one has the right to silence you. Your thoughts are just as important as anyone else's. And when you speak up, you give others permission to do the same. It's not about seeking approval. It's about standing in your own truth and owning your space in the world. The world needs your unique perspective, your experiences, and your insights. When you stay silent, you're not just holding back from others, you're holding back from yourself. Speaking up also means standing up for what you believe in, even when it's hard or unpopular. Whether it's in your community, your family, or on a larger social scale, there are times when silence can be complicit. In moments of injustice, inequality, or when something isn't right, your voice can make a difference. The courage to speak out against what's wrong is often what sparks change. It's the voices of those who refuse to stay silent that have historically driven progress, made the world more inclusive, and challenged the status quo. You don't have to be a public figure to create change. Speaking up in your own life and the lives of those around you can have a ripple effect. Sometimes speaking up is also about embracing vulnerability. It takes courage to voice your insecurities, to admit when you're struggling, or to share parts of yourself that are difficult to expose. But it's through this vulnerability that true connection is made. When we speak up about our challenges, fears, or desires, we invite others to meet us where we are. We create space for empathy, understanding, and authentic connection. Vulnerability can be a powerful bridge in relationships, whether personal or professional, because it fosters trust and mutual respect. While speaking up is incredibly empowering, it's also important to remember that it's not about speaking just for the sake of being heard. It's about choosing your moments, being intentional with your words, and using your voice to create positive impact. Communication is a tool for building understanding, solving problems, and fostering stronger connections. When you speak with clarity and conviction, others are more likely to listen and engage with your perspective. When you finally overcome the fear and step into the power of speaking up, you begin to reclaim your space in the world. You stop shrinking yourself for the comfort of others and start asserting your right to exist, to be heard, and to be respected. You realize that your voice is not a burden or an inconvenience, it is your truth, and it deserves to be expressed. Setting boundaries is one of the most essential acts of self-care, yet it's often something that gets postponed, avoided, or outright ignored. We're conditioned in many ways to prioritize others' needs over our own, to be people pleasers, and to accommodate the requests and desires of those around us. However, the longer we delay setting clear boundaries, the more we allow ourselves to be overextended, exhausted, and drained. Boundaries are not a luxury, they are a necessity for preserving our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. Without them, we risk burnout, resentment, and erosion of our self-worth. Boundaries are the invisible lines we set that protect our energy, time, and personal space. They define where we end and others begin. They are the guardrails that help us navigate our relationships with others without losing sight of who we are or what we need. When we fail to set boundaries, we often find ourselves compromising too much, saying yes when we really want to say no, or allowing people to take more than we can give. This might seem like a way to keep the peace in the short term, but in the long term, it creates feelings of frustration, anger, and emotional exhaustion. The root of not setting boundaries often lies in the fear of conflict or rejection. We worry that others will be upset if we stand firm in our limits, that they'll think we're selfish, unkind, or uncooperative. This fear is often compounded by the desire to be liked or to avoid disappointing others. But the truth is, when we fail to set boundaries out of fear, we inadvertently teach people that it's acceptable to push us beyond our limits. The more we put off establishing boundaries, the more likely we are to feel resentful toward others or to find ourselves in situations where we're overwhelmed, underappreciated, and emotionally drained. Setting boundaries isn't about being harsh or unkind. It's about being clear and direct about what we are willing to accept and what we are not. Healthy boundaries are based on respect for ourselves and for others. They are not walls that block connection, but rather guidelines that protect our emotional and physical space. In a relationship, whether personal or professional, boundaries help ensure that there's mutual respect, understanding, and care. When both people are clear on each other's needs and limits, they can interact in ways that are supportive and fulfilling rather than draining or hurtful. When you delay setting boundaries, you also delay the opportunity to have authentic, healthy relationships. People can only respect your boundaries if they are clearly communicated. When we avoid setting them, we often find ourselves feeling neglected, taken for granted, or mistreated. For example, in romantic relationships, not setting boundaries can lead to feelings of resentment when one partner continuously disregards the other's needs, or when one person feels like they're always the one giving while the other takes. In the workplace, failing to set boundaries can result in being overburdened with work, feeling undervalued, or being passed over for opportunities because you're constantly accommodating others at the expense of your own well-being. Without boundaries, there is no balance. We become so caught up in the needs of others that we lose sight of our own needs. We sacrifice our time, energy, and mental health for the sake of others' comfort or approval. But this leads to burnout, anxiety, and a sense of being lost or disconnected from ourselves. By not setting boundaries, we inadvertently teach ourselves that we are less important than the demands of others. This causes us to put our happiness and well-being on the back burner, thinking that we have to give everything to everyone else and that our needs are secondary. Boundaries also play a critical role in helping us preserve our peace of mind. Without them, we're constantly on edge, feeling like we're at the mercy of everyone else's needs, requests, and expectations. Every time someone asks for something, we may feel compelled to say yes, even when we know it will stretch us too thin. We might feel obligated to be available at all times, to answer every message, or to attend every event, even when it's draining us. But setting boundaries, whether that's saying no to an invitation, taking time for yourself, or limiting your availability, is a way to protect your emotional well-being. It's a commitment to prioritizing yourself, your needs, and your mental health. Another aspect of not setting boundaries is the toll it takes on our self-esteem. When we don't assert our limits, we inadvertently send the message that our needs and feelings don't matter. We might start to feel like we don't have the right to take up space to ask for what we need or to assert ourselves. This self-neglect erodes our self-worth over time. We might begin to feel powerless, unimportant, or invisible. Setting boundaries is a powerful way to reclaim your voice and your value. It reminds you that your needs are just as important as anyone else's and that you deserve to be treated with respect. Setting boundaries can also help you cultivate a healthier relationship with time. When you don't set limits on how much you give to others, you might find that you're constantly running on empty with little time left for yourself. You're unable to recharge, pursue your passions, or focus on your personal goals. Setting boundaries helps you protect your time and energy. Ensuring that you have the space to nurture yourself, focus on your own growth, and engage in activities that fulfill you. It allows you to be more present and intentional in the time you do give to others. Ultimately, setting boundaries is an act of self-respect and self-love. It's about recognizing that you are worthy of care, time, and space. When you set boundaries, you are showing yourself and others that you value your own needs, emotions, and well-being. You're also setting the stage for healthier, more fulfilling relationships, where mutual respect and understanding are the foundation. The longer you put off setting boundaries, the more likely you are to feel overwhelmed, resentful, and disconnected from yourself. But when you make the decision to set clear boundaries, you open the door to more authentic, balanced, and enriching connections.